Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day video. First one for 2022. Happy New Year for Monday, January 3rd. So let's get into the themes of the day. If you were missing some videos from me last week, it was just because I was partially off. Took a couple half days last week, and lighter activity, obviously, like last week. But for the day, S&P finishes up a little over 0.5%. The Q's better than that, up about 1% for the day. And IWM, small caps, actually outperformed for the day. So I think, one of the things that is in play for the day is on the first trading day of the month, we often see some new money being put to work, and kind of, it seemed like there was definitely some rotations in the marketplace. So even though the averages were up today, not everything was up. So really kind of interesting when you break this down. And the other thing, of course, to note was that a big move in bonds. So we don't know if that was also part of that first of the month rotation that sometimes takes place, is maybe a move into a little bit of move into small caps, some other places of the market, and a move out of bonds, right? So why don't we start there, and then we'll move back to the equities and the indices. But yeah, I mean, we haven't really seen much. Bonds have been kind of quiet. They did start to kind of slip towards the middle of the month, right? I mean, the last time that these things were kind of pressing to the highs was about 1220, right? And then we just kind of seen very little small green bars in there. The up days were small, but more red days, and then a big move, right? This is a big move. And here was another one back here on 923. So you kind of have to remember how, and why am I starting here with bonds? Because they do have a lot of implications, right? Remember that when you're looking at the bond price, and again, we're looking at the long end of the curve. I had a lot of questions about that a couple of weeks ago when we had the Fed meeting, talking about the Fed raising interest rates. They're not raising interest rates on this on the ZB or the 10-year, right? They're raising the overnight short-term, super short-term rate, which does not really help, other than for what banks are holding in cash. It doesn't really help them, right? Banks like a yield curve that's upward sloping. So right now we're just looking at the long end of the curve. This is the 30-year bond, right? So a big move in that, and the implications are it's good for the banks, generally speaking, right? Everything is kind of generally speaking, right? There's a relationship there, but it's not always one for one. So it's good for the banks. And then your higher multiple growth stocks, which, if you notice today, did not participate. They got hit, before bonds were even making this move, right? Bonds were down a little bit on the day. So I'm not sure if that was at play, because if you look at this move in bonds today, right, they did start to sell off in the beginning of the day. But when you look at the, ZB down 1.7% and TLT down even more than that, right? Here was the slide in the beginning of the day, but that was only about a third. They just continued to kind of move down for the rest of the day. So that's that. Again, notable because bonds do affect a lot. There was a virgin point of control that was taken out here. So it's possible that we do see a bounce here. If not, we could see, exploring some lower levels here. And here's how ZB looks on the weekly chart. Notice that we're in value for the year, right? Might as well turn these labels on for you so that you could see exact levels. And then we'll so I spent a minute or two here. Let's move over to the S&P futures weekly chart, right? We're starting above value, so that's a good thing. 47.31. Right, we're also above value on the daily chart too. Right, I don't always show that weekly chart, but I definitely want to see what the new value area is for the year. Again, when I'm talking about value areas, what I'm referring to is volume at price. Right, if you hear people talk about volume shelves, right, those, in my opinion, listen, I never want to say anything negative about an indicator. If you can make money with it, so be it. But when you look at volume shelves and volume profiles that are on the right of your screen, right, they don't put what the time reference is of the volume. So when the market webs that we use volume at price and draw a support, support levels or resistance levels based on this value area for the month, that is associating time, right? So we're looking at price, time, and value, right? Volume, very important, three things. Those other things, the volume profile on the right of your screen is not going to cover time. So be careful of that. It's much more significant when you associate a time when the volume occurred. Okay, so so a little bit back and forth here over the last week, and it does look like we're trying to resolve higher. Note we were a little bit sketchy again on the open. The other thing to note is we are in value for the week, right? 47.93 is going to be resistance. For now, we're in value for the week. But yeah, you could see around the open, right? And then we finally kind of got going a little bit, once we got close to 2 o'clock, and we did trend for the last couple hours of the day. All right, NASDAQ, I just want to cover these very quickly. Also in value, but making a nice move. All right. And then finally, small caps, which remember, small caps stalled last week, right? So this is the value area for the week. And again, it's a thin value area, but we stalled right in the beginning of the week. And that was basically it for small caps. They came back and retested on Thursday, failed. So we're now trying to get through that level. But again, I still think a very difficult daily chart to deal with. All right, so that's the indices. Two big stories for the day. Stocks were Tesla. Tesla finished up 13.5%. You had to decide whether or not you were going to chase this thing because it opened up 7%. If you chased on the open, maybe if it kind of came in here a little bit, you had a successful day on your hands if you kind of stayed with it. That was a nice, beautiful trending day. I mentioned pre-market that this 1337 VPOC was taken out, right? And I said that, hey, that's going to be the level to kind of trade against, right? We kind of ducked under there a little bit. And then once it got back above, up to 1200, I did not trade Tesla at all. I was a little bit frustrated because I had a couple trades that expired last Friday. Shame on me for not rolling those because of the numbers that were due out. I do own Tesla in the TTG trend portfolio, right? So it's nice to see that, that obviously do well there. So, and again, nice to hold a portion of this thing, but yeah, we're basically up at 1200. So where is this thing? We're at the top of value for the week, but it's amazing how quickly this happens, right? A little bit of a back test and gap and go, right? So I don't know. I don't have like a firm level here. I think for Tesla, if it wants to continue, right, we're through all those VPOCs on the 1 hour. That was the last one, right? There may be something further up here, but I don't see it, right? So if Tesla wants to go, I don't see any major, in terms of the volume profile in the market webs, I don't see any major resistance, other than having to fight through the previous high. So all in all, I think very, very impressive. And then the other stock that everybody was talking about today, because it did break out to a new high and the market value of the stock is Apple. I do like the breakout here. I do like the little, 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, kind of all inside bars off of this, and then a move higher. So I like this. I know some people talking about the valuation, but I do think that Apple kind of fits the mode right now of what investors are looking for. And when I say investors, kind of, the bigger institutions, this is TDIV, right? I've talked about this ETF a couple of times. This is the tech sector, but dividends, right? They pay dividends. So NASDAQ tech dividends, right? Much better than right now, acting much better than something like this, right? Which is the software, which is underperforming. Did come back off the lows, but this may need some more time right now with tech. So let me continue with some of the other sectors. I want to get to some other charts, but those were the two single stocks that were definitely got a lot of attention today, probably the most on financial media. And the other thing that was very interesting for the day, if you take out those stocks, really where the performance derived from in the indices was in the energy, a combination of things. energy had a huge day, right? So OIH was up 6%, XOP was up 4%, so making above here. XLE, right? But just huge day in energy, up 3%. So no change in trend in terms of that. Remember, energy was amongst your best performing group last year, and starts off that way again, up 3%. The other group that was hot, we already talked about bonds, financials. It's funny because I was looking for a bank to go long last week, and I just didn't like anything. Nothing was kind of setting up for me. I thought BAC was the most compelling out of the group, right? Bank of America, and that actually did quite well, but I just didn't really have like a long signal, right? So that had a nice gap, and I think that was one of the strongest ones today, up 3.8%. So that's one of the questions that I have for tomorrow. You could see JP Morgan, a level that I would watch for this stock would be 162, right? Yeah, so that's what I would watch too. And it will be interesting if this financials group could get going. Nice volume on this, right? It's been a very tough trade, these financials. They've been so quiet. They haven't even had, since this Goldman made a high back on the 2nd of November, and it's been kind of just stuck. Ugly price action back and forth. So, maybe if we kind of get a move above here, from a technical aspect, I think it looks better. Morgan Stanley is another one too. Remember Morgan Stanley a few months ago kept getting downgraded right when it was about to break out. Since then, the stock has done nothing but go sideways. Actually went down a little bit. So again, this has been a tough group. So I'm watching it. And I've got a little bit of exposure to it in the TTG trend portfolio. We've been long Goldman for a while, and we kind of added another name in there today. Small weight. I'll give you that name actually. It's not any big reveal, but Schwab. I always tend to go to where the strength is in the market, right? Schwab broke out about 2 weeks ago, kind of came in a little bit, and then bounced pretty nicely today. So I'm looking for continuation there. Again, I didn't do anything in my trading account with this, just added it to the TTG trend portfolio. Again, we have two different ways to trade at Tribeca Trade Group, or at least the way that I do, right? And it's kind of trading versus investing, right? So if you're a member and you're watching this and you signed up, I get a lot of questions about the TTG trend portfolio. The way that I look at it is it's a portfolio, right? So sometimes I get traders that are looking to replicate individual names. That's not the right strategy. It's trading the whole portfolio, right? It's kind of like an ETF, right? So when someone says buy this ETF, right, or the strategy is to go long an ETF, it's in my opinion, it's better to go long the ETF for their components of the ETF, not just two names in the right. So anyway, that's the one way that we kind of have a longer term portfolio, and then of course the trading account, which we trade in and out of. So anyway, so that's part of the story for the day. Next, I'll talk about a couple quick other areas. Hey, listen, Biotech did pretty well today. So we're starting to see that January effect of stocks. Biotech was amongst one of the worst performing groups last year. Strong day today. I don't really know what to do with some of these names or areas of the market, because even this strong move in Biotech, it's just a one-day move. The trend, it's still in value for the month. ARC is another example of that, right? Had a huge day today, up 2.5%. It's barely a blip on the screen, right? So again, it will start up for the year, but really 99.60 would be at least something for this ARC, where I think I would get a little bit more constructive on the group. It's also, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I'm a trend trader. I don't touch things. I don't touch a lot of things that are below the 200-day moving average. Why don't I do that? Because they're in downtrends, right? And my game is to basically position in things that are showing relative strength. Things that are in uptrends have been acting very somewhat consistent. And then I avoid things that are in downtrends, because things in downtrends, very difficult for them to reverse trend, a lot easier for them to bounce and then resume their downtrend. So nevertheless, these are all things to be watching for this year. The semiconductors, let's talk about them for a minute. And then I'll go through a couple of my trades. But the semiconductors, they do look pretty good here. You know, they had another nice day, up 2.2%. The one that was the most interesting of the day, I thought, was the Taiwan Semiconductor. What I think is really interesting about this Taiwan Semiconductor is this, right? This sideways action. And I think this is further illustrated when you look at this weekly chart. Remember how well this stock performed. It was about a $50 stock, right, a couple of years back, and it made this run all the way up to 140 bucks. Since then, and since it topped out, it went sideways for about a year. Sometimes stocks will do that after they have a humongous move. They'll just go sideways and people will kind of forget about them, like me, who probably thought a couple times over the last year that Taiwan Semiconductor was going to move higher, you know, resume its trend probably in here and maybe a little bit in here. And then really for the last few months, I've kind of ignored the stock, right? I just thought it got too difficult, but now I'm interested. So what's different about it now? Well, first of all, this is just one day of the week and I'm on the weekly chart. So that's, you know, really what you want to be looking at is this bar once we get to the end of the week. But if it stays up here, it's going to be above value, and it's a pretty slim value area. Look how slim this value area is. Notice on the weekly chart how coiled this is, right? So, you know, when things get coiled like this, and also when there's a slim value area, usually a big move is coming. So I did start a position today. Right, so I did resume a position. I started a position in this. Again, I didn't really want to chase this thing up so much, like 5 or 6%, because again, by the time it was 1028, the move for the day was already made. That's how fast sometimes these stocks are moving. Right? This is 1028. Right, the move's already made. Like, you know, so if you didn't catch this thing right off the beginning of the day, this stock did nothing for the rest of the day. Notice that's how a lot of stocks have been acting recently, is that if you don't jump on them, right, on, you know, in the beginning of the day, you miss everything. There's nothing else that happens for the rest of the day. So it's kind of been making it a difficult challenge. You know, the way that this market has been, it's been kind of challenging because sometimes you jump in the first 5 minutes and it's a fake move, right? You know, perhaps letting this kind of settle down a little bit till 9:45, that would have provided a even better entry than the first 5 minute. Right. And then you had this move up from 125 to 128. But again, I'm interested. I'm more of a swing trader. So I am looking at that overall pattern. Another one that I thought was interesting was applied materials. A little not quite as good of a move, but I like how applied materials kind of came in, you know, back tested here. So I'm long both of these names. Right. Unfortunately, I had a couple dingers today. You know, Nucor, which I added to probably not at the right time. This is a few charts. So this kind of tells me that there's a seller in the name when we see something like this, right? Big move higher on the open, and then it fails and it gives it all back, and then closes right around the lows. For now, I'm still in this trade, but you know, so this is what I was referring to, sometimes chasing this thing, and it's a fugazi of a move. Right. I also saw this in Alcoa today too, which is the second time Alcoa has done this in 2 weeks. Right. Remember just a couple of days ago, beautiful start to the day in Alcoa. Now it's still holding the trend, but this is not the price action that you want to see now a couple times, you know, in the last week. So interesting, this price action, and it's tough when things like that happen. Makes a high, really nice move up until about 10:15, and then just gives it all back through the rest of the session. All right, so that's a couple things that did not work for me. I was actually trying to take a target at $8 and I couldn't get it. This one actually came back. I thought this chart looked pretty good. This was on the weekend watch list, you know, looking for a breakout in this. And I see like 105 up here, but it did come back at the end of the day. However, I decided to take it off. I traded a little bit of Home Depot. Again, if when we go to these, and last chart I'll cover unless I have I have a couple other charts to go over really quick. So PayPal, you've heard me be very negative about this stock, right? I've talked about for a while, once the stock broke down, it's deep in a downtrend. However, I think with the January effect that you could see this thing begin to kind of bounce a little bit. We did get above the value, and now I have something to trade against, right? Which is the top of value for the new month, right? That's 193. And I'm shooting for this thing to get around like 205 to 207. Why 205 to 207? Well, there's some resistance on the daily chart. And I think there's also, let's see. Let's just wait for Thinkorswim to adjust. There's a version point of control up here, and I think that there's one in here too, but Thinkorswim may just need to adjust. Maybe not. Maybe there's not. So that's 209, but yeah. First extension away from the January value area is 203, and then 207. All right. So again, something a little bit different here, starting to kind of resolve itself higher. And right now, this would be a counter trend trade for me. I don't trade a lot of these, but I like the strength today in the payment space. Look at MasterCard, right? If you are more conditioned to be playing names that are acting better, MasterCard made a nice move today, closed almost on the highs, and maybe 387 is in its future if it can get through this VPOC takeout, which it did today, 366. Even if this thing comes back and retest, I might be interested in it tomorrow. All right, guys, that's it. I talked about energy. I didn't mention I did want to mention a couple names. Devon Energy. This was a name I actually put on last week. I kind of got shaken out of it last week. And of course, the thing made a new high today. Also, NRG saw a bunch of calls today. All right, so that's another name to watch. They bought the dip in this thing today pretty decently. You could see it closed down for the day, but only down 20 basis points. And they bought the calls right around the low of the day. All right, guys, that's it for the first day. One thing I will say is that number one, we have a member webinar tomorrow. We will be raising our prices the second week of January. So you still have time to sign up if you want to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. We will keep the prices the same for another week. And then we will be raising prices by roughly about 20% for our monthly membership. And if you sign up now too, you can attend the webinar tomorrow, which we're going to be talking about, just more thoughts, reflections from last year, things that I want to improve on, and what we could see and some themes that may play out that I'm looking at in the coming year. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.